Hello and welcome to the File Card Podcast. My name's Joe and I'm here with my brother Mike, and we got one heck of an interview for you tonight.
We got to sit down and talk with Bobby Vala, the creator of Valaverse. Bobby had some amazing news a couple weeks ago for anybody that grew up as a fan of Sergeant Slaughter. He has what I would consider, and Joe I think agrees, the greatest Sergeant Slaughter figure of all time. Whether you're talking about an action figure or a wrestling figure, he just knocked it out of the park with this.
Yeah. This one feels like Sergeant Slaughter himself, the guy we got to meet last year.
Oh, it does. You take one look at him and you know that's Sergeant Slaughter. And, it could have been like a Hall of Fame type bust of his face. I mean, it's the man.
That is perfect. You said it absolutely perfect. It is the Hall of Fame bust of Sergeant Slaughter. That is this figure. It really, really is.
The sound quality's not the best, but if you've listened to our show before, you know nothing on the show is the best. Bobby just has some really awesome information, and he has a great story to tell. So just be patient with the sound as you work through it, and really just listen to the story of how this all came together, because it's truly cool. And if you're a fan, like most of us are, you're just happy for Bobby that he's living this dream and really kind of taking us all along for the ride.
What's going on, guys? I've listened to your show a bunch.
That makes me feel wonderful. That's just awesome that Bobby listens to our show. Because I think whenever you do something and you wonder, well, will anybody care? Will anybody appreciate it? So it's very cool to know that you listen.
Oh, I mean, I always, I really don't, when I'm in the car, I don't really listen to music anymore. I'm all about podcasts. And, whether I'm working or in the car, or even when I'm working on stuff, if I don't have a movie on, I'll have a podcast on. And it's you can't beat a toy podcast. I feel because you could just kind of listen to it and not zone out, but almost get in and know exactly what they're talking about while you're doing something else. So it's an easy thing to get my fix.
Well, that's cool. I'm venturing more and more into the podcast. I kind of add a new one every week, so I can certainly appreciate that. But the big reason we wanted to have you on here is just to talk about that home run news that you released just a couple of weeks ago. First of all, great job keeping it quiet. I have so many thoughts, but Joe and I both decided not to listen to any other podcast yet with you on it, because we wanted to hear the story from you from the beginning. So tell us how this came together.
Well, the home run you're talking about, is it Sergeant Slaughter?
Yes, that is absolutely it.
I mean, when I say it now, it's still kind of surreal to me. I keep telling people this whole thing has been surreal for me. It's still wild, 2 weeks later, it still hasn't worn off, and it's still as cool as it ever was. But I wish I could remember who planted the seed or when I thought about it. I don't remember if it was my original thought or a good friend of mine. We both got laid off at Hasbro at the same time, and he was kind of in charge of protecting trademarks and stuff like that. So he would, we'd bounce off each other on what I should go after next. But I don't remember if it was, like I said, if it was my idea or someone else mentioned it. I think it might have been mine. And then I bounced it off him. I said, hey, what do you think about me going after Sarge? And at the time it's kind of one of those things where you say it, but you're that's not really possible, right? It's Sergeant Slaughter, and I'm just kind of a startup, so you don't think anything of it. And a good friend of mine, he was able to get me in contact with Sarge's agent. Because Sarge really isn't on social media, he's on Twitter. I'm not on Twitter, so it's I'm well, he's got to have an agent. So, I started from there, and I was, very easily able to get his agent. I got in contact with him, and, from their point of view, it's they don't know who I am. They don't know what Valaverse is. So it's they're in this cold call about someone wanting to make a Sarge figure. So, they're probably not taking it super seriously. and they used to deal with Hasbro's and Mattel's. And I kind of talked to him a couple times and said what I wanted to do, and he ran it by Sarge, and Sarge was interested, so I put a pitch together, and that pitch was how I wanted to present Sarge in the Action Force line, what I wanted to do for his figure, how I wanted to bring him into a character, how he would fit in the universe, and then, plans I had, like, moving forward. And Sarge loved it. And then he said, we just kind of have to get WWE's blessing. Not that, because he owns his likeness and his name, but because he has a good relationship with WWE, we wanted to make sure that they knew what was going on. And I was like, that's when I thought, like, all right, well, maybe this probably isn't going to work. They're not, they're probably going to throw a monkey wrench into it. So I was trying not to really get my hopes up too much, because I was like, I don't want to get my hopes up and have this one thing, like, stop it. And then I'm like, all right. And, like, that took about, like, a week. And I got the call, and they were like, hey, we're good to go. And I was like, wow, okay. And that's when the negotiations started. That's when we, like, started to fine-tune, like, what we wanted in the contract, what I wanted out of the deal, what they wanted out of the deal. And that went incredibly smooth for, when you think about, like, negotiating with a celebrity. I couldn't believe how smoothly that went and how easy that was. And we came to a deal that I feel like both sides were very happy with. And then it was like, holy crap. And, like, I let it sink in for a second. Like, wow, Sergeant Slaughter is, like, going to be part of Action Force. Like, that's for real, right? And it was kind of like you said, good job keeping it quiet. That was the hardest part. Because I love, you've seen, like, my social media, it's like I throw everything out there. Like, I don't keep anything a secret. You want to see me working on something, I'm going to tell you what I'm working on. Because I don't believe in, like, keeping things a secret from, like, fans and stuff, and I want to involve everyone in the process. But for Sarge, I knew, as big as it was, that I wanted it to have a huge impact when I announced it. So I said, all right, well, originally I was scheduled for Joe Fest, which would have been in June. And I was like, all right, here's what we're going to do. He's going to be the show. We have a panel, the first ever Action Force Valaverse panel. I was like, I'm going to have the figure, like, under a box. And I'm going to say, like, all right, well, I'm maybe a new figure, a new character in the line, but I'm going to bring in someone to kind of help me do it. And then I was going to have Sarge walk into the panel and, have everyone go nuts there.
I would have loved to have been there for that. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, that would have been cool. So I was a little disappointed when they pushed out Fest. I was like, oh, crap, like, how are we going to do it now? And I thought, like, all right, well, yeah, it's a bummer, but at the same time, if I do it over social media, it will reach more people instantly rather than doing it at Joe Fest and then having it out to social media. So it was a bummer for, like, a day, and I was like, all right, here's what we're going to do. And I was like, let me get the model made. So I got, I started having Sarge figure sculpted before, like, the deal was finalized, because I figured we were so close to it. Let me just get a head start on it. So got everything going, got the parts printed, and I started painting the model, and I was like, wow, this thing is, like, coming together. And then with every little step, I was like, this is crazy, like, painting it. And I was like, painting his head, and I put his hat on him. I was like, Sergeant Slaughter, like, this is wild. Like, this is crazy. I could go back and tell 8-year-old me, like, what's going on. And then, like, I'm taking the photography, and I text my buddy, I'm like, dude, Sergeant Slaughter, like, he's in the line. Because it still just didn't seem real to me. And then I had to plan, like, all right, this is how I'm going to do it. And, I would say that 98% of the people have praised me for the move, and 2% of people were a little butthurt. But, yes, I decided to rain on Hasbro's parade on a Friday. But,
I freaking love that, man. I love that. That was
perfect.
Amazing. I mean, how many chances do you have to get at Hasbro like that? I mean, they're a massive company, and then you have the trump card of trump cards and probably the single most popular character they've ever had outside of Snake Eyes. Amazing. I loved every minute of it.
I'm glad you appreciate it, because that's the way I saw it. I looked at, like, all right, well, Sarge is going to be big news. And I said I could go on Saturday, I could go on Monday. But they had already released, like, a week before, like, what date they were going to have something. And I was like, maybe it's a dirty move. But at the same time, I said, you know what? It's not about fair. It wasn't fair when they laid me off. That wasn't fair. So I looked at it like, yeah, I'm going to do this. Yeah, it's going to be about Sarge. Sarge is going to show.
So what else? Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt you. But what else it did was it was perfect for Joe fans because you got the build up to what Hasbro was doing, and then after that letdown, then you got the build up for what you were doing, and boom, did you hit the home run?
And and it was like it was all like it all just started happening so perfectly because that crap that happened with the network with the Cobra Man figure the week before.
Oh, it was disgusting.
Like they were in the doghouse from the start, and then they were like, all right, we're gonna do a fan Friday, blah blah blah. We're gonna have some reveals, and then people already knew, like, all right, well, they're probably going to show a few new figures, but they're going to, like, apologize and fix this whole Cobra Commander debacle. But then the best thing happened was all their stuff leaked the night before. So I was sitting in my hot tub with my wife, and I was like, you'll never believe what happened. All of Hasbro stuff for tomorrow leaked. So everyone's going to see it, and then the build-up is gone. All the luster that they built up. So it was like all the news sites had already covered it that night or very early the next morning. By the time Hasbro came out with their live stream, no one really cared. You saw one figure that didn't leak. Then it was like after 1 o'clock, people were like, "All right, well, what's going on with Valaverse? Like, what's going on at 3 o'clock?" Like everyone was ready for 3 o'clock, and then it hit, and then it was like it was almost as if everything that Hasbro had for G.I. Joe that day never even happened, and it couldn't have worked out better. Like it was the perfect way of doing things. It all came together and it all launched, and it's been such a positive thing that happened for just my company and for fans and the Joe community. It's been awesome. And the kind of like the icing on the cake was a friend of mine who has friends at Hasbro. He texted me later that night or maybe the next day. He goes, "This will probably make you happy, but they're very upset." And I was like, that's what I'm talking about. Like, that's how I knew, like, yes, we got it.
Like, I really never thought in a million years that they would let that go. You just assumed that they always kept Slaughter somehow in the background for some future project.
Hasbro's very cheap when it comes to that kind of stuff. And, he's basically, you have to license him because he owns everything. So back in the 80s, he was only supposed to be like the one mail away figure, just kind of like how Fridge was. It was like a one-off. But got so many orders for Sarge that they were like, they just put him they made him a character. And, he kind of, I don't know the whole story if Vince let him go or if he left because of the whole Hasbro deal. But he left the WWF at the time. So Hasbro was like, all right, great. Like, you're a staple of G.I. Joe. And he was in the animation. He was in the comics. He was in the movie. So it was like, Sarge is like one of the top 5 most important characters in G.I. Joe. But he wasn't a guy that Hasbro owned. So every time they wanted to do him, they had to pay for him. And, Hasbro doesn't like doing that stuff. So it's like, yeah, they did it as like one-offs, like later on, like in 2010, 2011, they did the compound figure. Then in 2015, they did the Creo set. But after that, they weren't doing anything with Sarge. And that was the other thing. I looked at it like, it's almost a travesty that WWE wasn't doing, like Mattel didn't do any figures since 2015 or 2016, and Hasbro wasn't doing anything with them. I was like, this is Sergeant Slaughter. Like, he should be a part of, like, all of toys, And I think that's what he really liked about it, because when I talk to him, he's so into this opportunity and this character, and he wants to know everything about Action Force, and he's very, like, immersed into it, and like, I love that about it. He's not just like a celebrity that's like kind of just doing something, just quick pay or whatever. He's like, no, this is awesome. He's all for it. He's helping promote it. You saw the video he did. Like, he's now a part of this, and I think that's what he wanted. He wanted to be in like a character again, and I'm glad it can kind of get Sarge back into the spotlight again, because he should have never left. He should always be there.
And I love how you brought him back in too. It's not the Sarge from 20 years ago. This is almost the Sarge of today. This is the guy that I shook hands with at Joe Fest last year, just back into an action figure, which is just awesome. Yeah,
and that was the whole plan, was to not bring Sarge in as a guy in his 30s or 40s. Like, I wanted to bring 67-year-old Sarge into the line because the way his character is set up in Action Force, he's an old retired vet that sees the state of things and wants to make a change. And he's the one that sort of forms Action Force and brings the team together. He's like the catalyst for it. And I thought that was a really cool way of bringing a modern Sarge into the story. And he also loves it. He loves the old gritty vet storyline.
When are we going to be able to read that?
So that, the comic, the script is already, Sarge loved the script. He approved the script the other day when I was talking to him. And I'm in the process of locking down an artist for it. I put a post on social media that I was looking for an artist for the Sarge script, and I got tons of submissions. I'm going through the portfolios now, trying to narrow down like the artist that I think will nail Sarge and be perfect for it. And I'm down to I've narrowed it down to a couple guys. So now I'm just kind of looking at their work a bit more, and I think I'll narrow that down probably this week, and then we'll get cranking on the Sarge issue. And since it's a full 22-page issue, that'll probably take about a month and a half to draw, color, and put the text in. So it'll probably be a couple months, maybe 2 months before I can get the issues out. I'm still looking at how I'm going to distribute the comic, whether it's going to be a digital subscription on the website, or if I'm going to do printed ones, or if I'm going to do because I have a bunch of issues already finished based on several characters. I might just do one trade paperback, like the Action Force prologue, and that's the beginning of the story.
I really like that
all
idea.
the characters.
So I know digital is there's probably a lot of positives. There's nothing like thumbing through a comic.
Exactly, and I understand that. It's tough because I look at it I got to look at it from a company standpoint. It's like to print the comics like that has to come out of pocket. And they're certainly not cheap, but I also know that people will want the comic. So I think we're gonna find a happy medium somewhere.
No, it's going to be great. No matter which way you go, I think it'll be successful. So Friday you have that release. On Saturday, I'm in Trim, Pennsylvania, and I'm with my daughter who's into 90s wrestling action figures, like Sergeant Slaughter. And we stopped at a toy store, and I'm talking to the owner. His name's Mike, and we start talking about Sergeant Slaughter. Never met this guy, and he's just going on and on about how the greatest Sergeant Slaughter figure was just released the day before.
That's amazing.
So I'm thinking to myself, we had already been in contact with you about being on the show. And I want to tell this guy, I want to be like, hey, man, actually, the guy that kind of put that together, I have a podcast, and we're going to do a show. And I thought, he's going to think I'm some crazy asshole. He's not going to, you know what I mean? He's not going to believe me. But I just thought that was so cool. Because he wasn't even a Joe guy. He grew up in He-Man and Transformers. But Sarge is such a big character, and his draw is huge, that he was excited about it and was going to order one. So I thought that was super cool. That, like I said, the home of Mr. Rogers, Latrobe, Pennsylvania, and some random toy store that I'd never been to, and this guy just brings it up and wanted to make sure that I do as a G.I. Joe collector. The new Sarge figure coming out. I thought that was awesome.
That's crazy. I love hearing stuff like that because I've had a bunch of things stories like that happen where someone said, "Oh, I was in a store and someone was talking to me about your line or something like that has happened." Or my stepdad went into a store and he heard two guys talking about my line. He's like, "Oh, that's my stepson's line." If after the show, message me the name of that store. I want to reach out to that guy because I love hearing those stories, man. I love reaching out to people and talking to people about that kind of stuff. That's awesome. That's really awesome.
I definitely will. So Friday night, you're sitting there. So are you feeling more like General Hawk defeating Cobra? Or are you feeling a little like Zartan getting one over on?
Honestly, man, I felt like Rocky knocking a drug out. It was it was a very overwhelming day because I'm really organized to plan things out, and like that morning, like I had everything ready. I had all the emails like ready for the press guys, for all the websites. I had everything written for the social media posts and so that. Like I had everything ready, and it's like all I had to do was like, all right, upload this to Facebook, upload this to Instagram, put this on the Kickstarter, put this on CrowdOps, send the emails out. It was only like a handful of things, and I should have been able to like do it real quick. I uploaded that thing to Facebook, and it exploded. I got like 20 messages on Facebook, 100 comments. My phone started blowing up, and I'm like, I'm trying to like get stuff done, but I'm trying to like enjoy the moment. So I'm like, guys, let me just finish this stuff. I'm trying to, friends are like texting me and calling me, and I'm just like, and it just didn't stop. Like it was a tidal wave that turned into a tsunami that just kept going, and it was awesome, and it lasted all day long, and then the whole entire weekend. That's when I knew like Hasbro had nothing on this because they were like, these were fireworks. It was great, and it was like it never stopped it, and it blew up so fast, and like I didn't expect it to blow up as fast as it did because I'm sitting in bed at night and I'm like going through like my Instagram feed, and Matt Cardona, if you guys don't know, he is an ex-WWE star, Zack Ryder. He does the Major Wrestling Figure Podcast, which is like one of the biggest wrestling figure podcasts like ever. It's done by two ex-WWE wrestlers, which is really cool. They do a great show and stuff like that. It's a huge following. And all of a sudden, he posts the Sarge picture on his Instagram. And I'm like, what? And he's like, I don't know anything about this figure, but this is awesome. And then everyone's messaging him like what it is. And then he messages me that night. So awesome. I'm like talking to Zack Ryder, like just messaging with him on Instagram. Like, that's how crazy it got. And, it's like amazing. And then the other cool part is like seeing like all the people that it caught on to. Like I noticed that a bunch of guys from WWE started like following all my Facebook and Instagram. Guys from Mattel started following and stuff like that because it's like when it gets out to like Zack Ryder and then it gets out to the whole entire wrestling community, then they're like, what is this Action Force? What is Sergeant Slaughter doing? Like, what is this? And then it like covers all that, and then it's like I'm on my friend's wrestling podcast, and it was great that it hit the wrestling crowd so quick, but it was like the Joe crowd. It was like it exploded, and I couldn't even like get ahead. I was literally like trying to reply to all the comments and texts and that like the whole weekend. It just got so crazy, and then at the same time I'm also watching like the pre-order sales just blow up, and yes. The bad is telling me like, this is like this figure is like one of the highest selling figures like of the week, and it's only been on their site for 3 hours. It's crazy stuff like that. Yeah, it was nuts. It was absolutely nuts.
So that was actually. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Go, Mike.
So that was one of the questions was going to be, was there anybody that reached out to you and really just took you off guard? Because I thought the reach would be big, and kind of what I'm hearing you say is the Sarge, this partnership has really turned Valaverse mainstream. I mean that is amazing. What's so cool about that is that you saw so much value in Sarge because you knew what he still meant to the community of, guys in our age group, but also they're all kids. Joe and I have 4 little girls combined, and all 4 of them love Sarge. They love him, and they want to go meet him. So I think that draw, kind of what he represents, it's still relatable to kids.
Yeah.
And of course, we're still following him. We're still excited about him. So that is so cool, and I'm so happy for you.
Thanks. Yeah, I couldn't be more grateful to Sarge for like giving me this opportunity because, like you said, yeah, Yeah, Valaverse had a little following, but now it's like it's mainstream now. It very much is, and that's so awesome to finally be there. And Sarge was like that missing piece. Like I always had faith in the company and the line, and I knew it would all pay off. But it was like this was the catalyst, man. This was this was the fuse that got lit and blew everything up.
Okay, so what's next now? What can we expect next from Valaverse?
That's what people keep asking me. They're like, "Who's the next guy you're gonna sign? You gonna sign Fridge?" And I'm like, it's kind of one of those things where I'm not trying to top Sarge. I'm not trying to replace Sarge. Like Sarge is my guy. Sarge is the peak of Action Force, and I'm not really looking for who's the next person to bring or anything like that. Right now, the focus is on expanding the line, getting the comics out, getting the production finished without any hiccups to get the product in people's hands by early 2021. Because that's the most important part. It's like these people that have pre-ordered the figures and are backing the line and are just patiently awaiting this stuff. I want to get it to them as quickly as possible, and I want people to really enjoy what they're getting and have that big payoff. So, now we're just kind of, in the thick of it, just making sure it all gets done, without any snags, hopefully, fingers crossed.
I'm sorry. I keep interrupting you. Are you starting to get test shots or copies back from the factory and being able to check them out?
My first test shots in August.
Okay.
Yeah. So that'll be fun. Looking forward to that.
Oh, I'm certain. So it'd be almost like the baby coming home.
Yeah. When I was at Hasbro, the best part was always getting samples. Because you kind of work on something, and then it kicks over to China, and then you kind of forget about it because then you move on to another line or another project. We're always ahead on working on stuff. But then all of a sudden you get samples and you're like, oh, nice. This is where we're at. So I can't wait to get those first samples because it's real. It's like, yeah, you see the models and stuff like that, but when it's really it's real tooled plastic, that's when you're like, this is real. This is something that's gonna be here forever. This is part of history now. So that's going to be big. When I look at milestones of the company in this line, it's like, yeah, obviously the Kickstarter funding was huge, but then there's these little things along the way. But then Sarge has been the greatest thing. Sarge is the most memorable, the most important thing that's happened so far. But then when I get those samples, that's going to be a big day. And I'm probably going to do maybe I'll do a live stream, a Facebook live stream, when I get the samples so that people can see me actually looking at them and reviewing them so that they're involved in the process.
Awesome. So the weapons, your weapons packs, for the guys buying the 6-inch G.I. Joes that aren't maybe real happy with those weapons, will the Action Force weapons, will they fit?
They will.
Okay,
they
awesome.
Will. Everything is all compatible with Joe's and Legend. So the backpack holes, the foot pegs.
Okay.
So do you mind if we ask you some Steel Brigade questions?
Absolutely.
Because I have a theory that you and my brother drive up the cost of Steel Brigade for every other G.I. Joe collector out there.
I will take 100% of the credit for driving up. I definitely drive with the right.
I appreciate. I can respect the fact that you'll own that. That's all right.
Listen, it kind of. Oh man, it sucks because I remember 2 years ago I could buy a file card for $40. I'll spend over $100 now for a piece of paper as rare as they come up, and it was like, I wanted to get to 100 Steel Brigade figures, and I finally got there. But it got to the point where the last 10 I got, I was like, man, these things are getting expensive. And I think I'm like, why are they getting expensive? And I'm like, it's because everyone knows I'm a big Steel Brigade guy, and people want more Steel Brigade because Joe as a whole, the vintage prices have been going up. So this figure that was kind of a $30 figure is now over $100 figure, and it's wild. Like, I can't believe it, But I'm glad. I'm also glad that it sort of balanced out, because when I was in the thick of my Steel Brigade collecting, like, people always thought like the gold head was the rarest one and it commanded the highest price. But I kept trying to tell people that's not the rarest one. The version A is the rarest one. And I was able to get version A's really cheap. And I was like, this is great, And now it got to the point where people get it, and now version A, the prices have risen higher than the gold head. So I'm glad that got rectified. It sucks that they're so high, but what are you gonna do? But the crazy thing is that the patches and the file cards, how high prices on those have gone. But yeah, it's like it sucks because every time like I see a file card and I'm like, I'm gonna have to pay over $100 for this, and I'm like, dummy.
Well, I'm fairly certain on more than one occasion you've outbid me on them. Because I was on the auction, I got out of it, and then you posted on Instagram a few days later.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, that's happened. Like, or like I'll win one, and then one of my buddies will like send me a message on Instagram or something. He'll be like, "Bro, did you just win that auction that ended?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Oh, you're such an asshole."
All right. Well, now that we're on Steel Brigade. Okay, so the rifle. The rifle originally came with Airborne, okay? Yep. And it's listed as black on yojo.com. But when you zoom in, I haven't seen any of the on-card version or the mailbags in person, but if you zoom in on some of them, they're a dark gray. Is that the same dark gray that comes with Steel Brigade? Or came, I should say.
Yeah, Steel Brigade was always dark gray. It was never black.
Roger. Yeah. And I knew that. I just didn't know if there was a difference in those two grays.
Yeah, hold on. Let me grab Airborne. Because there was always kind of one of, like, there's two schools of thought. Is it the exact Airborne rifle? Like, is it the exact color as the Airborne rifle? And I've always believed that it was. Some people don't. Some people say, no, it's a different shade of gray, blah, blah. Here's the thing. They're not taking into consideration that me being in the toy industry understand. When you're doing a production run of something and they're pouring the pigment into the molds, sometimes say you're doing, they don't do the whole run of, say, 100,000 all at once. It's like one day you're doing, 10,000. The next day, maybe you're doing 8,000. You're putting pigment into the machines, into the molds. So maybe one day the pigment is a shade darker or lighter, either way. But at the end of the day, the Steel Brigade rifle and the Airborne rifle, and I believe the rifle for it also came with the tactical battle platform. They're all the same shade. So they were using the same color. They might be off by like a little bit here and there, but it's generally the same color.
It does me good because I got a lot of inner crazy that was trying to figure this out, comparing multiple rifles. Yeah, so that does me good hearing that. Thank you.
No, little things like that I think people get too caught up in, and they try to they cause like a false variant, and I don't like that. So if I can educate people on that kind of stuff, like what I was trying to do with the gold head versus the version A. Mm-hmm. There's definitely clear variants. Like for instance, the backpack on version A has the cross on it, where it doesn't on version B and later. That's a clear cut thing. But also, I noticed with collecting so many Steel Brigades and doing so much research on it that there was a lot of overlap. Like I'll see maybe someone that got a version D, which D came with the Airborne rifle or the recoil rifle. I see some people, and I purchased some from some people that it had the dark gray Crimson Guard rifle, which came with version B and C. But they were the original owner. And I said, this is the original figure? Like, this is the original rifle? I said, yeah, this is how I got it. This is where I ordered it. So it doesn't make sense that someone would have a $30-$40 version BC rifle to pair up with a version D and not have the figure and vice versa. So it just does, you wouldn't do it. So that's why, and I've also bought a few like that. It's not like just one. Like I've seen a couple instances where people got a version D, it came with a version BC rifle. And I'm like, all right, because then the factory was like overlapping there, which, and then I try to look deeper into see, all right, well, when did they change the body? Like what date, what year, that kind of thing. And I'm able to sort of piece all that together by examining the file cards and examining the figures. So it's been this fun sort of, history lesson, like putting this all together. It's almost like you feel like a little bit like Indiana Jones, like digging into this one figure. And, I got to interview Kirk Zigian, who was the originator of Steel Brigade. So I got to pick his brain, and he loved that I was doing all this research on the figure and what it meant and the history of it. But I still think that there's still more to learn from it. But there's so many that I don't accounted for. You got to think about it. Like, say they probably shipped 100,000 of these Steel Brigade figures. I've only been able to cover between the file cards I have and the ones that people have submitted to my website. We only covered about 200 figures. Granted, the file card was what kids lost. So, there's only a small amount of them out there. It's the one thing that you're able to piece together the history of it. And, I'm able to track the serial number on it. To this day, I still don't have 2 consecutive serial numbers, which goes to show you, how many of these things they produce. Right. And only, a small amount of the file cards lasted. But it's been some just, diving into this figure here. And, because it was always my favorite Joe growing up, now having it in, the Action Force line. But I still, to this day, it's the one thing I check 30 times a day are the Steel Brigade auctions on eBay.
Yeah, I mean, they're in my safe search. So every morning while I'm drinking my coffee, I'm scrolling through them.
Yeah, I'm easily checking 20, 30 times a day, just because you never know. Because I've had times where I've, jumped on and something just got listed and I got it right away, or or I just missed something. And I look at the sold auctions and it's like, you're like, oh, I just missed that.
I got real lucky having coffee last week. Or the week before maybe. I don't remember exactly, but version AB legs, perfect. Came up for sale. Yeah, $30. Wow. I was very happy with that.
Nice. Yeah, I've got a couple sets of them. I got a bunch of pieces. I got a bunch of heads, torsos, arms, and legs, but it's the crotch piece that is the hard thing to come by.
Yeah.
See, you two are the reason I had to go on a site buy them from the Netherlands. I had to, and I had to wait 6 or 8 weeks to get them in. So that makes sense. Listening to you two talk, I understand so much more now.
Yeah, I have friends, I have guys that always message me dude, can you just let me get I just want to get one. You have over 100 of them.
So I know we're taking up a lot of time. Just a couple more questions.
Yeah, no, I love doing this stuff, guys. So ask away, man.
You've been collecting for a long time. Do you still enjoy getting out to small toy shops and looking around?
I don't that often. It's in where I live, there's only one collectible toy shop. And they don't really they have a good amount of vintage stuff, but it's not like those really cool vintage stores, So yeah, I don't get to them that often. I miss going to flea markets and stuff. I miss obviously when there are toy shows, I try to go to them. But it's I like going to the toy shows where they have varieties of everything. A lot of shows sort of specialize in stuff. But I like going to one where I can see 80, 90 toys and even modern stuff. Joe Fest was great because it had so much stuff. So I'm looking forward to that. But I've been busy, with the Action Force stuff that I don't really get out. I've been able to go toy hunting the last 2 weeks because I was trying to find that damn Casey Jones Raft 2-pack that NECA put at Walmart. I haven't been able to find that yet, but I try to go to Walmart a couple times a week to maybe I'll find one. But other than that, I don't really do any toy hunting or get out as much. And I wish I did, because I love that. Like, I love going to toy shop and just looking over everything. So much fun.
So, to get back to Action Force, I have to ask you what it was like to talk to Ron Rudat about your Steel Brigade.
Yeah, I mean, like, the Ron thing was like another kind of surreal thing that, you know, it's like, I always knew who he was, and he's like the godfather of Joe. And when I was at Hasbro, a friend of mine, and he's like, yeah, you want to go out to lunch with Uncle Ron one day? And I'm like, yeah. So it's like we're out to lunch, I'm like sitting there trying not to be a fanboy, but he like loves that. He loves talking to people about Joe, and he's very, very quiet kind of guy. But once you get him like talking about things he loves, like he's like really into it. And then we were done with lunch, and we're like, all right, well, we got to get back to the office. And you know, his nephew's like, oh, you want to come to, you know, when was the last time you were there? You want to come to the office? So he comes to the office, and then he like comes to my office, and he's literally sitting in my office looking at like a bunch of the 12-inch Marvel Legends that I was working on. And he goes, these are really great. He goes, I'd really love to have some of these. And I'm like, I'll get you a set. Like, it was just weird that like Ron Rudat, guy that sat in the office probably a couple feet away from where my office was, creating G.I. Joe, was now sitting in my office telling me what I was working on was amazing. And I'm like, this is wild. You know, and then it's like we became friends after that. And then, you know, I would always come by his house. His wife's great, his son's cool. And then, you know, when I was telling him about like Action Force, like early on, like before I'd even like started the first Kickstarter, like I told him what my plan was, and I told him I got Steel Brigade, and you know, he showed me like some of his like concept Steel Brigade concept work that he still has, and you know, we talked about the figure briefly, and then you know. One of the times I went over there, I brought the figures to show him the model. And then, you know, that's when I took that famous picture of him holding my Steel Brigade figure. And it was like, that was like, wow. You know, they're like little moments that you're just like, wow, like this is so cool. I'm glad I have like a picture of that. Because it's like the guy, you know, that guy designed the figure. And now he's holding my version, you know, is like, he's like, you know, buying into like what I'm doing, you know. Same thing with Kirk. You know, I never met Kirk, and I wasn't sure like what he thought about me like grabbing Action Force and Steel Brigade. But I met him at Joe Fest, and he came up to me and he goes, "I absolutely love what you're doing." And I was like, "Oh, this is amazing!" And now me and Kirk are tight. We go out and we have lunch all the time. So it's cool that like these guys that worked on the brand, I loved it as a kid, now love what I'm doing. You know, it's
awesome.
it's really, really cool. It's a very cool scenario.
So, as you kind of talk with them and Ron, Kirk, did you lean on any of them in your on how to approach Sarge, or did you just kind of go for it?
Yeah, no. The only person I leaned on was Gerald Priest, who's, you know, a good buddy of mine. Just because he had dealt with Sarge back when they did the Creo set, so he was involved in that process. So it's more just like me getting his feedback on like how negotiations went with that, and you know, I was kind of like explaining, telling him like, hey, this is the plan, like, and he told me, he goes, if you get Sarge in the line, he goes, that'll be amazing. And for him to tell me that, like, that's when I knew like it was the right move. You know, it's like, yeah, it's a gamble. You know, you're not sure like how it's all gonna go, but you know, he like made me feel better about the whole thing, because he was like, this is amazing. This will be so great for your line, and it'll propel Action Force like you guys said, into the mainstream. So he was the only one I really bounced it off of, because like I said, I wasn't telling anybody. There was only about 4 people that knew about Sarge, like my wife, Daryl, my buddy who got me in touch with his agent, and my parents knew. But I told him, I was like, don't you tell anybody, don't you tell my brothers, don't you tell anybody.
Now, I just have to ask, did this happen before or after Joe Fest last year?
The Sarge thing?
Yeah.
The Sarge only happened in February.
Oh my goodness.
Oh,
Okay.
wow.
right as COVID hit.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it was when I got in touch with this guy. Yeah, it didn't take that long. It was quick.
Just
really
a random
quick.
question. His weapons, which are just absolutely perfect for that figure. How did you come to pick those?
So I thought about it, and it's like, you see my room. It's like I have all this inspiration. I get to see all the Joe figures, and I looked at every iteration of Sarge and when he came out, and in the Real American Hero line, he only had his baton. They never gave him a weapon. He just had a baton. And then he's in the Triple T, and even when he came with the Warthog, he didn't have a weapon then. I was like, that's so weird that he's got bullets strapped to him in the Warthog version, and it's like he never had a weapon. And then in that Comic-Con figure, they gave him a revolver, like a Magnum, and this a big giant M60, and I'm like, all right, well now we're getting more into like Sarge, carrying something heavy. But for my version, I looked at it, okay, he's a gritty old vet. He's not going to carry, Scar or an M4 or something like that. He's not going to have a rocket launcher. I'm like, so what would Sarge have? And I remember thinking back to Avatar and the guy, the villain, the general that was there. He just had this cool futuristic revolver, and a big like Bowie knife. And I'm like, you're like a badass dude. Like that's all you need. You don't really need, a ton of weapons. So
it took me back to the Sergeant Major from We Were Soldiers.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Yeah. But I thought about it. I said, all right. Well, Carrick has a Bowie knife, so I'm gonna have to design a new Bowie knife. And that's when I was like, what would he have? And I was thinking, like, okay, well, he's retired, so maybe he's got this cool eagle-headed Bowie knife. Maybe it was like a ceremonial gift that was given to him, maybe from the president when he retired or something like that. So that's when I thought of that knife. And then the revolver, based off a real-world giant Magnum 357, and I was like, I just want him to have a hand cannon. I want to have this big hand cannon. And that's how that kind of came to be. And I thought it was the perfect balance for him to have just a pistol and a knife. I thought I had this weird idea of giving him like a cane sword, like if it was like a ceremonial like cane sword, like Watson had in Sherlock Holmes. But then I thought like Sarge is too macho to have like a cane. Like you look at him now, he doesn't walk with a limp. He doesn't walk with a cane. Like he's in his 70s and he's moving like you or I. And
he gives one hell of a handshake still.
Yeah. So I was like, I didn't really like the cane sword direction. That's when I was like, all right, well, I think the Bowie knife will be better. So that's how that came to be. People ask like, oh well, you give him like his baton, his riding crop, or whatever. And I was like, no, because I want it to be exactly like the Joe version. Like I wanted the Action Force version to be its own unique version. So that's why he's got a semi-different look. Like that's why, yes, he's got the black tank top, but he's got the jacket. People are like, oh well, I want a bare arms version. I'm like, well, you can buy the Karak torso and swap it out, and then you get your bare arms Sarge. Like I said, he's an older, grittier vet, and I wanted him to have his own unique look for Action Force.
Oh, he definitely does, and it's perfect. I mean, literally, I'm a huge G.I. Joe 3 3/4 inch fan, but that is the best Sergeant Slaughter figure there is out there, hands down. And I think,
thank you.
It just is him. There's no question. If you've met Sarge in the past few years, that's him. I mean, maybe a little muscle added, but I mean that is really, really him.
Thanks. Yeah, that means so much to me when I hear that. And when I was talking to Sarge the other day, he told me that he was showing his daughter, and his daughter said, "This figure looks more like you than any figure that's ever been done of you." I was like, "Wow, that's amazing! Like to hear, like that's cool, And like I've had so many people say, like this is the greatest version of Sarge like ever, and I'm like, that's to hear that's crazy,
Well, and I agree 100% because they used his likeness in the Cybo cartoon, but the figure that we collect looks like the action or looks like the character in the cartoon.
Yeah,
and then it kind of resembles the man but the figure that you made looks like the man. It is the man. So that is so cool. And I guess my next question is, if I could pick, like, I think what Sarge needs is like 2 sidekicks with like dad bods that do a podcast. Any thought that would be like helpful to Sarge in any way? Like a toy collecting, but then it turns out they're actually badass kind of fighters. I'm just throwing things out there. I don't know where you could maybe get.
Well, maybe an admin guy and a supply clerk.
I can look into that.
Yeah, I'm not sure that would really go over real well with the collectors, but I'm an idea guy, so just and it's free, by the way. If you run with it, you owe us nothing. Just wanted to throw it out there. So one of the things we ask folks when they're on the show, we'll wrap up with this. What are you looking for right now as a collector? What are you out there trying to find?
I said it before, that NECA TMNT Casey Jones Raft 2-pack. The 91 or 90 Ninja Turtles movie was so influential when I was a kid. And I love what NECA's doing with those movie turtles. So, like, when I saw that 2-pack, I was like, I gotta have that. And then they're like, oh, Walmart exclusive. I'm like, great. I'm never gonna get it. It's like it sold out in like 60 seconds. When it came out online, I was like, this sucks. Like, then I'm looking at prices on eBay, and I'm like, I'm not gonna. People are paying $120 for that set. I'm like, stop giving the scalpers ammunition. Like, stop. Stop driving up the price of Steel Brigade. But
see how it feels.
If you quit, I'll quit, Bobby.
No, see, this is karma. But yeah, so I'm really looking for that. I was looking for. I'm also a huge Ghostbusters fan, so I was looking for the new Ghostbusters stuff, and I got the retro set, and it's like, it pains me because I really hate buying Hasbro stuff. Like, I hate it so much. But I was in Target the other day, and I saw the plasma set, like the Legend set, and they had all of them. And I was like, all right, fine, I'll just get all of them. And I took them home. I'm looking at them, and I realized that only Winston comes with a proton blaster effect. So I texted my friend who worked on the line, and I'm like, dude, you only had one Ghostbuster come with a proton effect. And he goes, yeah, that was a big problem. I'm like, what a terrible miss that is. You have 4 Ghostbusters, with everyone with a proton pack, and one guy comes with the effect. So then today, I'm in Walmart, and I see in their clearance aisle 3 Winston figures, all on clearance, all missing the proton effect. And I was like, I texted him a picture. I said, this is the problem when you only include it with one figure. People buy a bunch of Winston, take it out, and then return it. Because I was like, this is a problem. He goes, yeah. He goes, because he only worked on the one end of it. He didn't do the design end of it. I was like, you tell so-and-so who designed it. I was like, tell him he really dropped the ball on this. Like, that was terrible. How could you do that? So that was something I was looking for that I was really disappointed by. But yeah, just that NECA 2-pack is eluding me.
Well, we'll keep an eye out for it, and if we get it, we'll send it your way.
Thanks, guys.
We appreciate your time so much, and thank you for agreeing to be on the show. It's been a lot of fun, and honestly, we could talk Joe's till tomorrow morning and not run out of things to talk about. I've really enjoyed it, and we look forward to seeing you at Joe Fest.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thank you guys for having me on. This was
awesome.
And
then, hey, once we track down all of our Still Brigades and we get our Action Force Still Brigade, well, maybe we can have you back on and we'll just have a whole Still Brigade episode.
That would be amazing.
Okay,
that would
sounds good.
Be amazing.
All right, hey, you have a good night, Bob.
You too. Thanks, guys.
That's crazy. You're so cheap.
I want to start this sober. That's not a good conversation. Just for you to be silent and go, that's ridiculous. You're cheap.
Okay, just so you know, my response will be the same.